In 1998, during the restoration of a crumbling coffee estate deep in Colombia's mist-covered mountains, workers found a warped floorboard beneath an old bridal room. Hidden under it, sealed in wax and dust, was a single letter, its ink faded, but its words still sharp enough to cut through 70 years of silence. It was signed by Isabella Vargas. For decades, her name had been nothing more than a whisper in Quindio's highlands, the bride who vanished without a trace. Locals spoke of her only in murmurs, afraid that saying too much might wake something best left buried. But that letter changed everything. It revealed a secret buried beneath the very soil that made her family's fortune, a truth darker than any legend. This isn't folklore. It's a true account, pieced together from forgotten archives, hidden correspondences, and voices the living once feared to raise. And it begins with a sale, the sale of a bride, and the silence that turned her wedding into a funeral no one ever saw. In the early 1900s, Colombia's coffee region was a kingdom built on labor, pride, and inherited sin. Families measured power not by compassion but by acres and bloodlines. And among them stood the Vargas clan, wealthy, respected, and utterly enslaved by their own traditions. At 19, Isabella Vargas was everything her world valued and everything it feared, educated, outspoken, and unwilling to bend quietly. Her father, once prosperous, was drowning in debt. His salvation came not from God or work, but from a contract, a marriage that would merge land, preserve status, and bury disgrace. The groom was her cousin, Mateo Vargas, 30 years old, stern, humorless, a man who measured life by what he could control. He owned Finca La Escondida, the hidden, a sprawling estate in the mountains, remote and self-contained. To him, Isabella wasn't a woman. She was collateral. When she was told of the arrangement, she protested. But her father's eyes held desperation, not cruelty. "It's for the family," he said. "You'll thank me one day." She didn't. The wedding was held under heavy clouds. Guests whispered that even the sky refused to bless it. In her lace gown, Isabella looked radiant, but her eyes betrayed dread. Mateo stood beside her, unmoved, his hand cold as the ring slid on her finger. The celebration was lavish, music echoing through the valley, but behind the laughter, the servants traded glances. Many had worked at La Escondida. They knew what the young bride did not. That night the carriage wound up the mountain road, lanterns swaying. When the gates closed behind her, Isabella's new life began and ended. Finca La Escondida was a labyrinth of rooms and shadows. The air smelled of damp wood and iron. Mateo left early each morning, returning after dark, his boots stained with reddish mud. He spoke little, smiled never. The servants avoided her eyes. Her only companion was Elena, the housekeeper, an older woman with a scar across her cheek and a habit of crossing herself whenever. Isabella asked questions. "Don't go near the west wing," Elena warned, "and don't open the cellar. Some doors aren't meant for you." At first, Isabella believed it was superstition, mountain folklore, but the sounds began, dragging footsteps late at night, the creak of furniture being moved, faint sobs echoing through the walls. When she mentioned it, Mateo laughed softly. "You're hearing the wind," he said. "You need rest, but the wind doesn't cry." Weeks became months. Isabella's letters to her family went unanswered. The courier she trusted to deliver one never returned. When she asked about him, Elena went pale and whispered, "Forget him, Signora. Forget everyone." One afternoon, wandering through the overgrown garden, Isabella noticed a small grave near the coffee bushes, unmarked, fresh. The soil was still dark. When she asked Mateo about it, his expression froze. "A dog," he said. "It was sick." But there were no dogs at La Escondida. Then came the discovery that changed everything. While cleaning a disused corridor, Isabella found a woman's glove beneath a broken floorboard. Inside, embroidered in fine thread, was a name, Liana, Elena's reaction was instant: panic, denial, trembling. "That name is forbidden here," she hissed. "Bury it again." That night, Isabella searched the house and found a small locked drawer in Mateo's study. Inside was a diary, Liana's diary. Its pages told the story of another young bride, married to Mateo years before. A woman who had also written letters home that never reached their families. A woman who wrote, in her final entry, "He is building something beneath the soil. He says it will make us rich, but it smells of death." Liana vanished soon after. Mateo claims she fled with a worker. No one questioned him. Isabella confronted him with the diary. He burned it in front of her, eyes cold and unblinking. "You're hysterical," he said, "like her." That night, he locked her in their room. The next morning, she bribed a stable boy with her mother's necklace, begging him to deliver a letter to her father. It never arrived, and the boy was never seen again. By then, Isabella knew she was trapped. The gates of La Escondida never opened without Mateo's orders. The phone line was cut. Even the workers seemed afraid to speak her name. One stormy evening, lightning cracked across the mountains. Isabella crept into the forbidden west wing, guided by a single candle. The air was thick with a chemical stench. Not decay, but something sharp, metallic. Behind a false wall, she found what Liana had written about: a crude laboratory. Barrels, glass tubes, burlap sacks marked with strange symbols. Not coffee, not medicine, something else entirely. Mateo Vargas wasn't a coffee baron. He was one of the first men in the region to process coca, long before the world would name it cocaine. His fortune was built on blood and powder, his plantation a front for something monstrous. And now Isabella knew. When she confronted him again, Mateo didn't rage. He smiled. "You shouldn't have looked," he said. "You could have lived here quietly." The next morning she was gone. Mateo told the workers she'd run away, overcome with madness. He paid the police to file a brief report. The Vargas' family, humiliated, never spoke her name again. But among the servants a rumor persisted that Mateo had thrown her into the old well behind the mill, the one said to swallow secrets whole. Decades passed. Mateo grew old, remarried, died peacefully. His empire flourished. The well was sealed with stone. And then, 70 years later, came that letter. Hidden beneath the floorboard, its ink faded but legible. In it, Isabella wrote, "If you read this, I am gone. My body lies where the bitterest coffee grows. Do not mourn me. Mourn the silence that allowed this to happen." Her letter described the lab, the workers forced into silence, the murder of Liana. It ended with one line: "He told me the roots would hide everything. But roots always remember." The letter reached historians and investigators. Tests on the soil near the old well revealed traces of alkaloids, chemicals from early cocaine processing. Beneath the concrete, they found fragments of lace, bone, and a ring engraved with the initials IV. The Vargas family denied everything, but the truth no longer needed their permission. Isabella Vargas' story is not just the tragedy of one woman. It's the anatomy of silence, of what happens when power decides who gets to speak and who must disappear. In the end, her letter didn't just expose her killer. It unearthed a legacy of corruption that would shape generations, turning Colombia's coffee paradise into a land where greed and crime would intertwine for decades to come. So when you sip your coffee tomorrow morning, remember Isabella Vargas, the bride who never got to choose her wedding, her husband, or her fate. Her voice was buried beneath the roots, but she found a way to speak anyway, because silence, like the earth, can only hold its secrets for so long. If stories like this haunt you, stories of human darkness, buried truths, and forgotten women, subscribe to Dark Roots. Every voice we resurrect is one less buried in silence.